I will go ahead and call the Cottage Grove City Council regular meeting to order for April 15th, 2020. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. And in this case, since we're all remote, we'll just state the Pledge of Allegiance, if you will. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, we did that one pretty good this time. So, all right, next on our agenda is number 3 is roll call. Joe, would you please do the roll?
Councilmember Mills?
Here.
Councilmember Dennis?
Here.
Councilmember Thiede?
Here.
Councilmember Olson?
Here.
Mayor Bailey?
Here. So the next item on our agenda is number 4 is open forum. This is the opportunity for anybody in the residents that are tuning in this evening and watching that have a question on something that is not on tonight's agenda. There's an opportunity for you to enter your question on the screen before you. There's a little, I'm assuming if I'm reading this right, there's a little box down below that you can open any questions and we can take it from there. I'm not seeing anybody else at this moment on my participant screen, so let me just double check. Is there anybody at all that wants to speak or do a message on open forum? All right, seeing none, at this point, I will close open forum and we will move to number 5, which is adoption of the agenda.
Move the agenda.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Dennis, seconded by Councilmember Olson. I will go ahead and have Joe do the roll again.
Councilmember Mills?
Yes.
Councilmember Dennis?
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede?
Aye.
Councilmember Olson?
Aye.
Mayor Bailey?
Aye. All right, we'll move on to number 6, which is presentations. We do have one presentation this evening, which is our situational update regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. And in this particular case, Captain Gwen Martin will be starting us through this one.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Is it showing up okay?
There we are now.
All right. Thank you very much. Since January of this year, when information about a new coronavirus came to light, Cottage Grove's Emergency Management Division has been closely monitoring the evolving information from subject matter experts about COVID-19. By maintaining situational awareness, we started preparing for our response to potential disruptions to critical infrastructure and supply chains that could affect city operations. We initiated a review of our existing continuity of operations plan to identify gaps or problems that needed to be corrected. Then on March 15th, our incident management team was called to action in an emergency planning meeting to develop objectives and strategies to protect against and respond to the threat of COVID-19. We began to prepare for potential workforce interruptions and took appropriate actions to ensure that our city was capable of continuously performing essential functions and operations. Throughout these last 4 weeks, our incident management team members have been working diligently to respond to guidance provided by local, state, and national public health officials and to communicate accurate information to those affected by this pandemic. All of us have participated in daily conference calls, updates, webinars, meetings. We virtually activated our city's Emergency Operations Center, and our well-organized IMT is committed to ensuring the health, welfare, and safety of our valued city employees and of the citizens of Cottage Grove. Through our dedication, support, and collaboration, we have been working together in a coordinated, flexible, and progressive way to mitigate and recover from the impacts of COVID-19 in our nation, in our state, and in our community. So the numbers from today are up on your screen, the Minnesota case overview. There are many more cases in Minnesota that we just don't know about because testing remains an issue. Currently, over 40,000 people have been tested. Over 1,800 cases have returned positive, and we have 88 cases in Washington County. 940 patients no longer need isolation, and we have had 87 deaths. So last Friday, Governor Walz issued Executive Order 20-34 directing the Commissioner of Health to share information with the Department of Public Safety, 911 dispatchers, and first responders. In the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act, the legislature has permitted the disclosure of private health data to the extent necessary to control or prevent the spread of serious disease, such as COVID-19. The Department of Public Safety has been working with the Department of Health to develop protocols that will enable 911 telecommunicators to provide this information to public safety responders dispatched to known COVID-19 addresses in Minnesota. The Division of Emergency Communications Network has been designated to send the lists from MDH to each of the PSAPs, which is the public safety answering points. It is unknown exactly when ECN will receive the first list from MDH. In preparation, Washington County Sheriff's Office Communications Center manager has seen the draft of the COVID-19 caution protocol and has put together a plan for Washington County first responders. Once confidential lists are provided to the PSAP, the communications manager and a supervisor will be viewing the lists and entering a caution note, which will be linked to an address. Agencies will not be given lists. The only time there will be an awareness of a caution is if there's a call for service at the designated address and it pops up on the computer-aided dispatch screen. In order to protect the public's health and slow the rate of transmission of COVID-19, Minnesotans need to stay at home and limit movements outside of their homes to essential needs activities. Appropriate precautions include assuming that everyone you meet may be a carrier of COVID-19. Therefore, it is important to practice good hygiene and social distancing and wear a cloth face covering in public settings where social distancing measures are difficult to maintain. We all have a responsibility to support the efforts to minimize the impact and spread of COVID-19. In our city, asymptomatic staff are encouraged to self-monitor for symptoms of an acute respiratory illness, fever, cough, shortness of breath, and check their temperature at least once a day, preferably before work. We have also developed a reporting of exposure or symptoms form to assess the absence of fever and the absence of acute respiratory symptoms, which then gives us the ability to track employee absenteeism related to COVID-19. At this time, I can respond to any questions you may have.
All right, Council first, is there any questions that anybody may have for Captain Gwen Martin?
Mayor, I would like to make a comment if I could, please.
Yes, Councilmember Olson.
Gwen, thanks again for the update. You and the rest of the team, including John Pritchard, just doing an amazing job of keeping the staff and the council informed, as well as our public here in the city of Cottage Grove. So I want to say thank you for that. Recently, the governor extended the peacetime emergency. And I know that there have been a number of folks who have been somewhat confused about the difference between a peacetime emergency and the stay-at-home order, because they are not the same thing. So I'm wondering if you feel comfortable kind of explaining the difference between the peacetime emergency and the stay-at-home order so that people have a better understanding of how one is different than the other, but has a direct impact on the other.
Thank you, Councilmember Olson. When Governor Walz declared the peacetime emergency that allows us to operate under state statute chapter 12 with the emergency management rules and regulations, and some things are lifted and other things are put into place. So when the emergency is declared, the governor can then make these executive orders and implement them in furtherance of securing the health, safety, and welfare of Minnesotans. So one kind of leads to another. I don't know how really better to explain it in a simpler fashion.
Thank you. So it's my understanding then that the stay-at-home order is actually a result of the governor calling the state of peacetime emergency, because that state of peacetime emergency is what provides him with the authority and or legislative power to then issue the executive order around stay-at-home. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So one is not the same as the other, but without the state of emergency in effect, the governor's ability to issue executive orders such as the stay-at-home order is not present, because it has to be under that state of emergency for him to actually be able to do the stay-at-home order. So the reason I asked the question is, of course, the state of emergency has been extended for a period of time, but at least at this point in time, you know, the executive order around stay-at-home has not been extended. It certainly could be, but one is not the same as the other. They are not identical orders. They are different.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Was there anybody else that had any questions for Captain Gwen Martin? All right. So again, thank you, Gwen, and the team for doing such a great job keeping both us on the council and the public well informed of what's going on with COVID-19 within the city of Cottage Grove and how we're handling it. So great job. Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you, Mayor and council members, for your continued support.
Sounds good. All right, next on our agenda is consent. Is there anything that council would like to pull on consent? I see Councilmember Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull items E and J.
E and J. All right. Sounds good. Anybody else, council-wise? I was just going to pull H just for comment for the general public, so I'll just mention what H is in a sec. So seeing nobody else, if Councilmember Dennis, if you're fine, because I know you're going to do a proclamation, I'm just going to do H real quick, just because I want to mention to the general public since there's been talk around it. As the public is aware, by May 4th, I believe, or 6th, it's around that date, the bulletin, which represents the local newspaper in Cottage Grove, is no longer going to be in existence. So obviously that's a sad day for the loss of our local newspaper. But at the same time, what we have to do as a city is we're required by law to do notices and publications. And we have done our notices and publications through our local newspaper. Because they're going away, we have to redesignate at this point a new local paper. So the one that we're going to be doing this evening will be effective April 16th because of the time shift. We will be recommending designating the St. Paul Pioneer Press as this Cottage Grove's newspaper for official publications that are required. So I just want to make the public aware. So if they're looking in the future for any of the information, you know, public meetings, draft ordinances, things like that, that will all be, it'll be on our website. I should mention that. That's probably the crucial place to look, frankly, and in our packets. But the fact of the matter, and the public has access to all that. But the fact is it will be listed at this point in the St. Paul Pioneer Press after April 16th. And then just a little point I'd make, and I know the council's been you know, looking towards this too, is, you know, with the change of technology and even the fact that we're doing this council meeting right now this evening through a web-based format, I have actually expressed some desire with our state elected officials, and specifically Senator Bingham and Senator Kent and such, and Metro Cities, to really look at the necessity of saving those dollars that we're going to be putting into these publications by actually allowing us to do things online. in the future, and not just the city of Cottage Grove. I'm talking all cities, counties, and such. It's definitely a cost-saving measure, but it also is with everybody's technology changing and everybody, doing more stuff on the web and that, this is probably a better way to do it. So I have expressed, and so has Metro Cities and the League of Minnesota Cities are working on that. So that's it for me. Councilmember Dennis, did you want to start with the E, which is the Economic Development Proclamation?
Yes, Mayor, I would like to, and it's my pleasure as a member of the Economic Development Authority to read this proclamation tonight for us. So, whereas the International Economic Development Council is the largest professional economic development organization dedicated to serving economic developers, and whereas the International Economic Development Council provides leadership and excellence in economic development for communities, members, and partners through conferences, training courses, advisory services and research, in-depth publications, public policy advocacy, and initiatives such as the Accredited Economic Development Organization Program and the Certified Economic Developer Designation. And whereas economic developers promote economic well-being and quality of life for their communities by creating, retaining, and expanding jobs that facilitate growth, enhance wealth, and provide a stable tax base, whereas economic developers stimulate and incubate entrepreneurism in order to help establish the next generation of new businesses, which is the hallmark of the American economy. And whereas economic developers are engaged in a wide variety of settings, including rural and urban, local, state, provincial, and federal governments, public and private partnerships, chambers of commerce, universities, and a variety of other institutions. And whereas economic developers attract and retain high-quality jobs, develop vibrant communities, and improve the quality of life in the regions. Now, therefore, on behalf of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Cottage Grove, County of Washington, State of Minnesota, hereby proclaim the week of May 4th through 9th, 2020, as the National Economic Development Week in the City of Cottage Grove. We passed this day with our vote on the 15th of April, 2020.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that proclamation reading there, Councilmember Dennis. And then you had one other item that you had pulled, which is, again, a very important one, and that has to do with accepting donations for first quarter 2020.
I did. Thank you, Mayor. And this is something that I like to pull every quarter because we really value and appreciate anyone, businesses, private individuals, et cetera, who are willing to make a donation on behalf of any of the needs of helping to make our city be a better place. So in the first quarter of 2020, we had received actually two different donations coming from Northern Tier, which is the refinery out of St. Paul Park. One donation in the amount for $1,000 for police department training, and the second one in the amount of $1,000 for fire department training. So the language goes, whereas the businesses listed above have made donations to the City of Cottage Grove between January 1 and March 31st of 2020, and whereas the City of Cottage Grove, on behalf of the police and fire departments, gratefully accept these donations and recommend that they be used for the purposes intended by the donors. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Cottage Grove, County of Washington, State of Minnesota, that the donations received in the first quarter of 2020 as a fiscal year listed in this resolution, totaling $2,000, be accepted on behalf of the city operations, which they were designated to support, with the sincere thanks of the City Council. Passed this 15th day of April 2020, compliments of Mayor Myron Bailey. So again, we appreciate very much. Always remember that no donation is too large or too small. Every dollar makes a difference and helps to make our community be a better place. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councilmember Dennis. And I did see a message. Councilmember Thiede, you did want to pull K?
Yes, please.
If you want to speak on K and to the public, K on the consent agenda is the Minnesota Department of Health COVID-19 Grant Award.
Yeah, I just want to make mention of this because I think it's great. We, as a city, we do a fantastic job of applying for grants and so forth. And this was actually a Department of Health COVID-19 grant award for $44,000 that Deputy Fire Chief John Pritchard completed. And we requested a little bit more, but but we ended up with the 44,000, which is great, and it included $2,000 for PPE purchasing, and additional funds will be used to staff one additional firefighter, paramedic, EMT, 24 hours per day for 6 weeks. And so I think that's great, and also just like to thank everybody that you guys are doing a great job and keeping our city safe and secure. So
Fantastic. Thank you. And good call out. On the mayor's weekly update during the COVID thing, I do mention this subject in my comments for the public to be aware. So it's a great opportunity to help our public safety personnel within this difficult time. So that was all the items that were pulled for discussion on consent. So at this point, I will look for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
move consent.
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Thede, and I think I heard a second from Councilmember Olson. Is that correct?
Sure. Second.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. So Joe, do you want to do the roll, please?
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
You're muted, Steve.
Steve, you're muted.
He's got a thumbs up.
Councilmember Thede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. And just for the record, on the screen you can see Councilmember Dennis. Maybe you want to say aye?
I'm in there. Aye.
There we go.
There we go.
So we've got everybody. So if anybody, all motion carried on the consent. So if anybody is interested in something that was on the consent calendar, all of those items have been approved. We'll move on to number 8, which is approved the disbursements. 8A is, of course, pay the bills. I'll need a motion.
Motion to approve the bills.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Mills,
Second.
seconded by, that was Councilmember Thede, correct?
Correct.
All right, sounds good. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and have Joe do the roll again.
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. And just because this is all kind of new to all of us, I'll just mention that a Q&A comment came through just thanking the council for approving consent by Mr. Newman. All right. Number 9 is public hearings. There are none this evening. 10 is bid awards. We do have some bid awards to go through this evening. So the first one, which is West Point Douglas Road Rehabilitation Project, Jamaica Avenue to Belden Boulevard bid award. And I believe our Public Works Director, Ryan Burfine, are you going to walk us through this?
Yes, Mayor.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. Happy to bring to you tonight the West Point Douglas Road Rehab project, where we received some very favorable bids just on Monday here on the 13th. And quickly, just want to discuss, before we get into the bid results, just talk about the assessment process and what we're proposing to do. I know staff and council have had some discussions on this. When you look at these projects, especially the road projects tonight, West Point and 80th, they're very poor condition, very important for us to, hopefully, move forward, get them built this year. And also considering, the economy and some uncertainties in the economy and the jobs that projects like this do create. They're very large projects that have a fairly long duration and do create jobs and create that stimulus. So while it is important to be able to move forward, we do understand the impact to our residents and businesses, financially with this coronavirus pandemic. So being cognizant of that, we are proposing to delay the assessment hearings until fall of 2021. So that effectively give a 1-year delay for those assessments. So they would not see the assessments until spring of 2022, just to give them a little more time to hopefully get through this situation and be back on a good footing. So that is the recommendation, that we move ahead in that route. In terms of the bid results, we did receive 7 bids for this project on Monday. You can see the low bid was provided by GMH Asphalt Corporation for about $1.9 million. The estimate for this project was $2.35 million. So very favorable bidding. And one thing I want to note, when we estimated this project, really that was back in February, looking at other communities and the counties and how pricing was coming in, and a lot of their projects were coming in between 5 and 15% over before the coronavirus pandemic. And since then, you've seen a lot of uncertainty with projects moving ahead, so contractors are bidding more aggressively. Also, fuel prices are very low, which really help the construction process, and also with oil prices going down, bituminous has gone down significantly. So that played heavily into our projects, we feel, and why we got the favorable bids that we did. With that, we are recommending award of this project to GMH Asphalt Corporation, and I'll answer any questions the council may have.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ryan. I know this project has been something the public has been asking about over the last couple of years on the road quality over there along where the park and ride is, bus garage and such. So it's a great project. I'm glad the price came in lower. Council, any questions for Ryan Burfine? Okay, seeing no questions at this time in this particular one, I will need a motion by a council member.
Move to approve.
All right.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve adopting a resolution awarding the West Point Douglas Road Rehabilitation Project to GMH Asphalt Corporation for the bid amount of $1,000,000. Boy, I wish 1,000. $1,906,029.12. And I think I heard a second by Councilmember Thiede.
Yes.
There we go. All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Joe, do you want to do the roll?
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. All right, so the motion does approve on that particular item. Now we'll move on to the next road project, which we've been waiting for patiently too, and that is 80th Street Reconstruction from Jamaica Avenue to Keats Avenue. And again, Ryan Burfine, our Public Works Director, will take us through this one.
Thank you, Mayor. So once again, another project, another roadway that we're all very familiar with, very poor condition, and looking forward to an opportunity to fix it and have a new roadway for our residents. Similar to West Point Douglas Road, we're also proposing to delay the assessment on this project. There's 5 residents that have direct access, and then a church as well. So being kind of fair and equitable with our projects throughout the city, we were proposing to do that as well, have a 1-year delay on that assessment hearing until fall of 2021. So that's how we're proposing to move forward. And in terms of the bidding, received 8 bids on this project. Once again, very favorable bids, similar percentage under the estimate. We were just over $4 million with Ryan Contracting Company, $4 million, $37,000. And the engineer's estimate was $4.85 million. So estimated in a very similar way at the same time back in February. So understandable and good to see those favorable bid results. If council remembers, we are doing an advance on our municipal state aid funding. So by having these better bids, we don't need to do as large of advance, so we can pay that advance off quicker in the next 2 years and move ahead on other state aid projects after that. So very good to see. With that, staff is recommending awarding the 80th Street Reconstruction Project to Ryan Contracting Company. And once again, be happy to answer any questions.
All right, once again, council, any questions at this point for Ryan? All right, seeing none, I'll again from council ask for a motion, and I would just ask if council would be so kind as to just read the resolution so it's on the record appropriately.
I would move to adopt a resolution awarding the 80th Street Reconstruction Project to Ryan Contracting Company for a total base bid amount of $4,037,132.50. All
right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Thiede. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Dennis. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Joe, do you want to do the roll?
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. So motion carries on that one. The next item on this particular topic of bid awards is C, which is Hamlet Park Expansion Phase 2. And once again, Ryan Burfine, you will take us through this one.
Thank you, Mayor. So in terms of Hamlet Park Expansion Phase 2, for this project, we also received bids on Monday. We did receive 3 bids. This project's, quite a bit different than the first 2. Much more specialized work, creating those ball fields, not really paving, a lot of manual labor. So when we got the bids and opened them initially, you can see the apparent low at that time with TNG Construction was, right about at the engineer's estimate, which, was a good thing to see. But upon review of the bids, they did miss a critical step in that bid that made them non-conforming, that requires that we reject it. So when you look after that, Versacon is about $180,000 over the engineer's estimate. So given that we have time, this project couldn't start until June 1st as we wrap up some other work out there and those future ball fields. Felt it most appropriate to recommend rejecting all bids and rebidding on May 14th. And with that, we're going to, just take a little, closer look at the bids and rebid it. Not really make any changes to the scope of the project. We may do an alternate as we kind of look at park funding and some other things as our developments, depending on how they move forward. So, but overall, the scope of the project that we bid would remain the same. So that's our recommendation tonight, is to reject all of those bids and allow for a new bid date on May 14th, 2020. As far as estimating goes and anticipating bid amounts, we're very confident that we should see similar pricing kind of move forward in terms of what's happening over the next month. So at this point, not too concerned with the rebidding and still receiving favorable bid results. So with that, I'll take any questions the council may have.
Okay, council, any questions for Ryan at this time? All right, seeing no comments or questions. Again, council, we have a resolution before us. I'll look for a council to make the motion.
Mayor, I'll make motion to adopt a resolution rejecting all bids for the 2020 Hamlet Park Expansion Phase 2 project and authorize establishing a new bid date as of May 14th, 2020.
All right, so I have a motion by Councilmember Dennis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Thiede. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll let Joe do the roll.
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. All right, thank you, everybody. So next on our agenda is the regular agenda, and we do have 4 different actions this evening, or items to review. The first one is A, is Langdon Hills. There will be a PowerPoint as part of this, and I believe Emily Schmidt, you will be starting us through this project. So welcome.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Bailey, council members. Hope everybody can hear me and see everything okay. The request this evening does come from Distinctive Design Build. It is a zoning amendment request for a 25-acre parcel, as well as a preliminary plat request to be called Langdon Hills, which will be 51 single-family lots. The property is located just north of 65th Street. It is just west of Hinton Avenue and the Silverwood development, and then just south of the Eastbrooke development, specifically the Eastbrooke second edition of that development. The majority of the site is tilled fields. There are some buffers along the outskirts of the parcel as well. And then the existing farmstead is in that southwest corner as well, with some of those existing outbuildings. Again, the preliminary plat will be comprised of 51 single-family lots. The plat will maintain a 3-acre parcel in the southwest corner with the existing farmstead and some of those outbuildings to remain. No HOA is proposed with the small size of this development, as there really will be no common areas, outlots, or cul-de-sac islands that will need long-term maintenance. A little bit of background, the developer did hold a neighborhood meeting back on March 11th. Some of the major concerns that were raised at that meeting focus on maintaining the tree buffers that exist currently along this easterly property line in between the Silverwood development and then the proposed new development, as well as what that distance between the proposed homes and the existing homes would look like. So the developer did address those at that meeting and ultimately verified that a large portion of that tree buffer would be preserved as a part of this project. The other concern that was raised was from this easterly property owner that is adjacent, as there was a little bit of a property line issue where his driveway kind of came over into the development site. So he's a little bit concerned as to how that would be impacted as a part of this development. So then fast forward, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on March 23rd, and the commissioners did inquire to the developer if there was the ability to potentially shift Harkness Avenue, the access road, a little bit further to the west to avoid impacting this property owner's driveway and some of the landscaping that was there. The developer since that time has amended his site plan. So it's tough to see, but this outlot C ultimately runs the extent of the entrance road there and will encompass that property owner's driveway and all of the landscaping that is along there. And the developer will deed that outlot to that property owner. So there will be no conflict with where that driveway lands as a part of this development. And again, it will allow that property owner to maintain his existing access and driveway exactly as is. Land use for this site is guided as low density residential, 1 to 4 units per acre. The developer is proposing just above 2 units per acre, so right in line with that long range plan. Again, as mentioned, access to the site will be off of 65th Street with Harkness Avenue here. I'll also note that as a part, of this project, Washington County is requiring some upgrades to 65th Street with some turn lanes here. So that activity will be happening as well as a part of this project. Harkness Avenue will run the length of the property, or the development rather, and will connect at the Eastbrooke development that is at the north as well. And then 63rd Street will extend connecting at the Silverwood development on that east side as well. And then I'll make note that the new property owner of this 3-acre parcel will maintain access off of 65th Street. But I will note that at such time Washington County does upgrade 65th Street, that access will need to essentially go away. And this property will then need to access through the Langdon Hills development at that time. As we typically see with developments, this developer is proposing sidewalk on one side of each of the street, again, to allow that easy flow of pedestrian traffic. That sidewalk will connect at the Silverwood development on the east, as well as connection with that Eastbrooke development on the north side. The developer will also be responsible to install the section of trail along 65th Street, as we see with all of our developments along 65th, to create that great connectivity that we do have throughout the community. I'll also make mention that the city is working with the the property owner to the east to hopefully make this trail connection Silverwood. Hopefully my mouse clears that up, but Silverwood has a trail stub at the end of their development. So we're hoping that we can make that trail connection. And again, the city will work closely with that property owner. As a part of the 2040 comp plan, there's not a park area guided or planned for this particular parcel, but I just wanted to give a visual to show access, again, through our vast trail system within the community. Does allow access to the east to Sunny Hill Park, as well as to Peter Thompson Park on the west side. Eastbrooke development on the north side is also proposing to have a small park there as well, which again will be easily accessible through sidewalks and trails. The developer is proposing 2 stormwater ponds within the development. Both of those ponds will be outlots and owned and maintained in the future by the city. Water service will be connected to an existing water main in 65th Street, while sewer will actually be connected at 63rd Street at the stub here at the Silverwood development. And then I wanted to make note, these 2 neighboring properties, the city did require that the developer provide a ghost plat to ensure that as a part of this development and future development, that it would be easily developed per se. So when these property owners, if they ever do so choose to develop, it would fit right in with the existing development that's surrounding it. The developer did conduct an individual tree inventory on the entire site. Again, I want to make mention that a large buffer on this east property line has been indicated on that inventory that it will be preserved as a part of the project. So through the grading and the development, a lot of these mature trees will be preserved. The developer is proposing to remove, it's approximately 39% of what we consider to be qualifying trees on the site. So this is just over the permitted 35% removal threshold. So there is just a bit of mitigation required as a part of the project. So the developer is permitted to plant those trees on site, or we do have a mitigation fee that can be paid in lieu of those trees being planted on site. And again, as we see with most of our developments, 4 trees and 10 shrubs will be required on each lot, along with a boulevard tree for each lot. Corner lots will have 2 boulevard trees. And then again, with all of our developments along 65th Street, we want to maintain that corridor. So we are requiring that there be a landscape. I'm going to call it a buffer, but be installed along 65th Street. I know this will be a pond, but as you can see along at Silverwood over here in this far corner, we want to maintain that landscaping throughout this entire corridor. And finally, Distinctive Design Build, they are a very custom home builder. They're actually currently doing some work within the community, but their homes do range from about 1,200 to 1,800 square feet on the main floor living, and they are starting in the upper 300,000s to somewhere in the 500,000s just for their custom product. Again, being that they are a custom builder, it will provide a large variation to each of the homes architecture within this development. So there'll certainly be a variation throughout the entire 50 lots within this proposed development. And again, architecture on all 4 sides, windows, and again, a lot of varied materials to make sure that there's that look within that neighborhood. So with that, I will leave you with the recommendation. Staff is available for any questions. I also believe John Anderson with Distinctive Design is available for questions as well.
Okay, Emily, I know I've got some, but I think Councilmember Thede, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. A couple things. Emily, why don't you go back a couple slides to the showing there, right there. Oop, there you go. And a couple things. Number one, I appreciate seeing the ghost plats in there because it's kind of a little pet peeve of mine to kind of leave some of those old properties sitting out there in the wings. But so very good on that. The other thing that as I went through this is a few years ago, I used to go back into that area cross-country skiing, obviously with permission and everything. But in the northwest corner of this property, which part of it showing as outline, you can kind of see it right there, that clump of trees. That's actually an oak savanna, and it's sitting on top of a hill. And I personally would be very, very disappointed if that disappeared. And, again, I haven't been out there for a few years to really look at that. But a fair number of years ago, I was chasing turkeys and everything else back there on my cross-country skis. So I would definitely like to have that kind of reported on you, right? Kind of where your arrow is, that clump of trees right there. It was a bunch of oaks on a hill, and it was like a savanna because there really wasn't wasn't a lot of underbrush or anything. It was just the pure trees. And that'd be actually, in my opinion, a great spot for the trail that's coming across there to kind of pop into too, to have, and while it doesn't maybe have to be an official developed park, it could definitely be nice area to stop in and so forth. So one other question that I had is it seemed also the other thing with looking at all this is that there seemed to be quite a bit of ponding or property taken out for ponds and waters, the outlots or whatever. Why is that so much?
Mayor Bailey, Councilmember Thiede, I think I'll just make a quick comment about Councilmember Thiede's first comment about the oak savanna up here in the corner. I did just take a look at the tree preservation plan, and a large majority of the trees in this northwest corner are planned to be preserved.
Okay.
And with that, I'll actually defer either to our city engineer, Ryan Burfriend, or if John Anderson wants to take us out too.
This is Ryan. I can take that, Emily, if you want to stay on this screen. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Thiede, looking at the ponding, for part of it in that northwest corner, like Emily mentioned, only a portion of that will be ponding. The rest would be those trees preserved. But like all of our developments in town, the stormwater requirements end up being very dependent on where they're located, and we follow our surface water management plan and how we manage that. So this discharges to a public waterway, a DNR protected waterway to the west, and then down to a wetland to the south, and it eventually ends up in the Hidden Valley ponds through our west draw drainage area. So it's a much more restricted drainage area due to just the natural way it existed prior to development and how it is now. It's somewhat bottlenecked at the end. So we do have to be more restrictive as it develops, just to make sure we're not creating any downstream flooding impacts. So similar to the Eastbrooke development, they had quite a few ponds and very large infiltration basins. This is consistent with that. So that's the reasoning behind the ponding for this development.
Okay, thanks.
Sounds good. Councilmember Olson?
Thank you, Emily. I appreciate the presentation. A lot of good information there. In reading through the notes from the Planning Commission meeting, a couple things stood out to me. First, there was mention of safe crossing of 65th Street. I wanted to bring that up because, as you well know, as we continue to develop along some of these busier county corridors, oftentimes what we find is we've got families moving in with young kids, and they want to be able to, go on their family walks and spend time together, going to various parks, etc. In this particular case, you've also got a school. And so, being able to cross 65th safely is going to be a big deal. And it's much like we dealt with when we started to develop along 70th Street over here where I live. And I'm just curious if you've been able to get any kind of clarity from the county, or if there's been any further discussion about how we might want to address that problem. And then I have two more questions as well.
Yes, again, if it's okay, I will defer to our city engineer, public works director.
Perfect.
Yep. Thank you, Emily. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Olson. That's a discussion we've started with the county. You're right, it can be challenging on these roads, especially one like this that's 50 miles an hour, to provide a safe crossing. So right now at the actual intersection with all the turn lanes would be very difficult just due to the width that it'll be to cross. But we are looking at just to the east of this Harkness Avenue, kind of between here and Silverwood, with the new turn lanes. There'll be kind of a separation between the turn lanes where we could actually potentially put in like a concrete refuge island to allow people to cross one lane at a time. We're working with the county on whether that's viable and if that can go in now or if that would go in later, but that's what we've identified as probably the best option. But as we go into final design with the developer, we'll be working very closely with the county engineering department on how we can provide that in the future.
Another element of that, Ryan. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna, sorry, Councilman Rose, just mentioned too, we did talk to the school district and they won't allow it, even if we have a safe crossing, they said they wouldn't consider it a walking route because any road over 40 miles an hour, they don't allow children to cross. So just one other item to note is this would be a bus area, even though they're right across from the school.
Yeah, you read my mind. That was going to be my next question is, with the changes in walking distance to and from school for the grade school kids, and even frankly to Oltman, which is less than 1.5 miles away from this neighborhood, you know, those kids could potentially be walking, but you've addressed that. So thank you very much, because that was a big red flag in my mind. The last piece is I read the note about the road width differences between Silverwood and the new development. And I'm just curious, first of all, what was the impetus behind the road width changes? Because you're going from 32 to 28. And then secondly, what impact, if any, is that going to have on the way that you route snow plows and different things to be able to service that area effectively?
Yeah, Councilmember Olson. So when we've looked at our road widths, if we have a development that's part of an ongoing preliminary plat, like down in Mississippi Dunes when we built the 5th edition, it was pre-platted with those 32-foot wide streets. So we stuck with that, even though we've gone to 28 here since 2007. Since this is an entirely new plat, our process has been to go with that new 28-foot standard width, which we just kind of taper down. We did that with Hamlet Heights. We did a street width reduction, for example, in 2018. So that's kind of been our consistent process when it is a new plat to use that new street width. In terms of the plowing, up in this area, it's as we have more 28-foot wide streets, we're prioritizing our single axle trucks for those types of areas in general, whether they're 32-foot or 28-foot wide. So that's something we're looking at doing moving forward more along this north end of town, making sure we have single axle trucks up in there. They're a little bit smaller and can get through them, but also fully capable of plowing the 32-foot wide road. So I think we have a pretty good plan in place working with the street superintendent on that right now.
Fantastic. That's all I've got, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. Was there anybody else that had questions on council?
Yes, Mayor. If I may, I just want to piggyback on Councilmember Olson's comment about the street with the crossing, with that hill there too. I would concur having that island being a better option for people to cross because of that hill. You can't see coming down, and if people were able to walk down further, much safer option. So thank you, Councilmember Olson, for bringing that up. It's a concern of mine as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other council members have questions? So I have, well, one's maybe a little bit of a piggyback on Councilmember Olson, Councilmember Mills. So for staff, you know, however you can create the opportunity for eventually for people to go across the street, because the other thing, you know, whether we like it or not, kids are going to want to cross. That we could say we're going to bus them, but they're going to still try to get across. But also because there is park equipment over at the elementary school, and people are going to want to go over there to play out during off-school hours. And so if it's easier to go across to get to the school to play than it is to say to go up to Peter Thompson or some of these other parks that we're creating a little bit farther away, the likelihood is the kids are going to try to cross that street. So with that being said, one of the suggestions, and I've mentioned this prior, but I'll just mention publicly, is I like the ideas of things that we're doing specifically along 80th Street, and that with those amber lights that have, you can hit the switch and it stops traffic, or supposed to stop traffic, but it's obviously a very visible thing. Probably very important to have something like that in this particular area because of the hilliness of 65th Street. So I just wanted to make a comment on that as you're working with the county on what kind of the long-term plan is from an accessibility standpoint. And I do know there's typically Safe Route to Schools funding, and I know you guys are great with going after those opportunities out there. I would be very much in support of looking on something for this particular area. Second thing is regarding that trail that Emily, you mentioned between what's going to be the existing trail along 65th, there'll be what could be a short gap in there, and then it hooks up to Silverwood. Have we already talked with that homeowner there, or maybe the developer has, since I know he's at this meeting here, about making sure that that truly does happen? And then who actually pays for that connection? I don't know who wants to take that.
Yes, Mayor Bailey, the city is currently in communications with that property owner, as it's ultimately not a part of the proposed development. So we've taken that on to have those communications and have reached out to him and are working closely with him. Ultimately, we need to obtain some additional easement to fit the trail in there. So we'll certainly work with him, as we know it's very important to make sure that we have that trail connection. We've made the point that folks will ultimately create their own trail, if you will, if that trail is not installed. So we'll continue to work with that property owner in hopes that when the trail is constructed as part of the Langdon Hills development, that trail segment can also go in at that time. And Ryan, if you have more to add, by all means.
Yeah, no, I think that covers it well, Emily. And then we would just work with the developer, the actual cost of the trail, being outside the bounds of the development. We'd have to work with the developer on that, but we would want it to be constructed at that same time to be most cost effective. So.
No, and I understand that. And my point of that, and not even so much about specifically who pays for it, but it sounds like the developer here is working with that owner of that property there too, because his property did encroach upon the developer's property, and he's going to be deeding that over to the homeowner. I would think that would help mitigate the desire to have a connected trail through the front of along 65th there. So I'm just, my comment is specific that, I think the developer's done a great job working with that homeowner to help let him keep his driveway where it is, even though it's on the other person's property. So I'm hoping he or she, that owner of that property, will work with us and the developer to make sure that we can properly have a connected trail along 65th. Okay. Any other comments by council with staff? I believe the developer is on the line. Did you have anything you wanted to add as it relates to this development? I guess not. Okay. So I guess at this point, we do have, if there's no other comments from
this is John Anderson. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, now we can, John.
Okay, I had to get myself off the unmute button, I guess. So, yeah, good evening. So I do have a couple quick things here. Emily and Ryan did a very good job presenting the project and what we're looking to do out there. And I just want to kind of touch base on the timing real quick. Our plan is to move forward with this project yet this year. We will be submitting final plat, hopefully here by the end of the month. And we're hoping to start construction, near mid to end of June, somewhere in that neighborhood, and have streets paved yet this fall and start home construction the fall of this year. So Distinctive Design Build is based out of Lakeville, and they are building currently in the Summers Landing project in Cottage Grove, so they're familiar with the area. And they are, like I said, a custom builder and would be looking to build the houses in here. It is possible a few of the lots could get sold to another custom builder since there are 50 lots in the neighborhood. We have also spoke with the neighbor to the east about the outlot and the driveway encroachment. And then we've had some discussions on the trail. And I know I just talked with Emily earlier today about that as well. And I know the city's been working hard, or all three of us together, to try to work things out and get that trail done. And if everything gets finalized with the easement or whatever document is needed, the plan would be that would get constructed this year at the same time our trail would go in along our site. So.
Perfect.
With that, I don't have any other real comments at this point, but if you have any other questions, I guess I can take them. So,
fantastic. Well, we're happy to have you continue in Cottage Grove, hopefully here if the council approves. But any other questions, either for the developer or staff, council? I don't see any comments from public. All right, seeing none, council, we have two motions before us. If one of the council members wants to take the first motion.
Mayor, I'll move to adopt ordinance number 1025, approving the zoning amendment to change the zoning of the 25.01 acres from R1 rural residential to R3 single family residential with a PUD, a planned unit development.
All right, so I have a motion by Councilmember
Second.
Mills. I didn't see, was that Councilmember Dennis?
No, it was me.
I'm sorry, I couldn't
Thiede.
tell. That was seconded by Councilmember Thiede. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, Joe, do you want to do the roll?
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. All right, now we have number 2, second resolution. Who would like to take that one?
I will move to adopt resolution 2020-050, approving the preliminary plat for a residential subdivision to be called Langdon Hills, which will consist of 51 residential lots for single-family homes.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Thiede. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Dennis. Any other council comments? Questions? Seeing none, Joe, do you want to do the roll?
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. So the motion carries. Good luck with your new development.
All right, thank you.
Perfect. All right, next is B on our regular agenda, which is Northwick Park. And Ben, our Community Development Director, is going to take us through this, and this is another development.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, we have another single-family development proposal for review tonight, that being Northwick Park, and the applicant on this one is D.R. Horton. So tonight we have a request for zoning amendment to change the zoning from Ag 1, which is agricultural preservation, to R3 single-family residential, also with a PUD, as well as a preliminary plat for residential subdivision, again being called Northwick Park, that would create a total of 71 lots for detached single-family homes and 3 outlots. So in terms of location, the subject property is located north of Military Road and just south of Woodbury, and borders Parkview Point development, which is to the east, and as you can see on the visual here. The subject property consists of a total of 27.6 acres of land, and the property currently consists of a single-family homestead, along with some agricultural outbuildings, a grove of trees, and majority of the site is comprised of tilled fields. In terms of land use and zoning, so the property in the 2040 future land use plan and the comp plan is guided for low density residential. As mentioned, the applicant is proposing to rezone it to R3, single family residential. The PUD is needed for some deviations to medium lot size and setbacks, which is pretty typical with the developments we're seeing come through these days. So in terms of the preliminary plat, which is shown in the middle of the screen here, again, 71 single-family lots, 3 outlots, all of which will be deeded to the city. Those outlots include 2 stormwater ponds. Also, outlot A, which is in the northwest corner, as you can see with my mouse here, is an outlot that would provide a driveway connection. So the owner of this land actually owns a farmstead across the Woodbury border, with their existing driveway coming the length of the western property line. So as part of the purchase agreement to buy the property, that owner requested the ability to have a connection into the proposed cul-de-sac here. So we'll be providing that through outlot A, and again, that outlot would be deeded to the city. In addition, outlot B, which has stormwater ponding, also will provide the opportunity for a trail connection from this roadway north to a planned trail, which I'll show in a slide in just a bit. There is no, similar to the last project, there is no overall HOA for the property. However, per our requirements, we are requiring a landscaped cul-de-sac island in this cul-de-sac, and so an HOA will be needed to maintain that landscaped island. In terms of transportation and access, primary access will be off Military Road on the south side of the project. There will be 2 through connections on the southeast side of the development that will connect into Parkview Point. There will be a temporary cul-de-sac initially kind of at the northeast corner of the development with future through access to the property north and east of this site for when that property develops. And similar, there'll be a connection to the west when that property develops in the future. In terms of sidewalks and trails, the image on the left shows in orange the proposed sidewalks for the development, again on one side of each street minus the cul-de-sac. A recreational trail is also proposed on the north side of Military Road, which I believe will connect to the south with future connection as we develop to the north and east. And then as mentioned, the developer will be providing a trail connection from the right-of-way north on the northeast corner of the property. And that will connect to a future trail connection that will lead people down to the proposed Glacial Valley Park, which is east of this development. And as you can see, the recently developed Ravine Parkway is located at the south. There will be access through Ravine Meadows development, which is to the south of this property, to get to that trail system as well along Ravine Parkway. In terms of landscaping and tree preservation, so the existing trees for the most part are going to be removed on site due to site grading. As a result, tree mitigation is required. The developer will be making up for those trees through planting trees on site. As with all developments, boulevard trees will be required as well as landscaping for each lot. No parks are proposed for this particular development. So as a result of that, parkland dedication is required. In terms of architecture, there'll be varied architecture through the development. The developer is proposing single-story Rambler product, which is similar to what is in Kingston Fields, with price ranges from $340,000 to $400,000. And with that, the recommendations are before you to approve both the zoning amendment as well as the preliminary plat, and I will stand for questions. Deb Ridgway from D.R. Horton is also on the line should you have questions for her.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Council, any questions for Ben at this point?
Yes, Mayor, I have a couple questions.
Councilmember Thiede, we'll go ahead and start, and then we'll go to Councilmember Olson.
So Ben, the outlot A, is that going to be paved like a trail, and who's going to maintain it?
Councilmember Thiede, members of the council. So my understanding is, and I might have to defer to Ryan on this to see if he has any more information. I don't know if they're planning to pave, or even the applicant or the developer might have knowledge on it, whether or not they're going to put in a gravel driveway to continue that driveway to from the border south to the cul-de-sac, or whether or not they're going to pave it. Ryan, do you have any information on that? If not, it's probably a better question for the developer.
Yeah, I'd have to probably defer to the developer, but I believe we were going to require that it be paved just to be consistent, with the other driveways throughout the development. So I don't believe it was maybe if it's showing the plans right now, but we were looking to require that as we go through final plans.
And ultimately, it's intended to be just like a regular trail, or is it's going to be wider, like a driveway, or is it a single vehicle passage, or?
Yeah, it'll be probably one with probably 12 to 16 feet, just a driveway essentially to get up to that house to the north.
Right. Okay.
So it's so Councilmember Thiede, it's actually going to be a driveway. It's not really going to be a walking trail connectivity thing. It's more for the house property to the north there.
And then when that develops, as Woodbury comes down, eventually, because that's deeded to the city, at some point it becomes something other than a driveway.
Yep, I could speak to that for the future. We have been meeting with Woodbury. They are doing a master plan for south of Dale Road and they're showing some park facilities kind of off in that direction in the future. So I think we would likely use that and kind of convert it over to a walking trail for probably some connectivity into the city of Woodbury in the future.
And if you look at the map, you know that those two properties in Woodbury, there is actually an access road that goes right along the Cottage Grove Woodbury border that connects in with Military Road, going off to the east and connecting with Military just west of Jamaica. Is there a reason why they wouldn't use that as their driveway?
Yeah, I can speak to this one, Mayor and Council, and as we did pose that question, and again, as part of the purchase agreement or the sale of the property, the owner was adamant that they would maintain access through this development, and like I said, the developer or the applicant can speak better to the terms of that agreement.
All right, I was just just kind of curiosity whether we're going to incur much of, if any, costs associated with that driveway, but so. The other question that I had is, at what point, we're now right to the south of Military is, what's that development going to be called? Yeah, that one.
That is Ravine Meadows.
Okay, so at what point does Military Road become a trail? And at that point, how does the two properties to the southeast get access to their properties? The triangle down there.
Correct. So currently, Military Road terminates in this area here, where there's access north to Parkview Point. So this parcel will gain access either via Ravine Parkway or at the end of this terminus of Military Road. And Ryan, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but that's how it's really set up.
No, I can continue. Yeah. So right now, our intent for Military Road has been to preserve it as long as those existing rural residential properties need that. So at this time, we are proposing to continue to leave Military Road in place. However, we are collecting with each development the cost to remove Military Road and install the trail adjacent to their development. So at such a time that it's no longer needed for those residents, we will have money that's been reserved from these developments to do that work, so the city won't have to bear that burden in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Olson, I think you had a question.
I did. So Ben, I'm going to ask this of you, but it might actually be more for Ryan. Seems like he's getting a lot of airtime tonight. So we'll go with you first, and then if you can't answer it, feel free to hand the baton off. In reading the Bolton and Menk report, there are a whole host of issues that are pointed out relative to stormwater and sewer and all kinds of other water related things, from hydrants, et cetera, and the spacing on those. So I'm just curious, how much of that is because we're nudging up to a neighboring community to the north, and so we have that challenge to work with to try to gain consistency with pipes and all that sort of thing. And then relative to the actual stormwater ponding itself, it looks like Bolton and Menk made some pretty significant recommendations around changing ponding and the type of ponding that they were proposing to use. So can you just give me a little snapshot, or give us a little snapshot into what sort of progress has been made relative to those issues as pointed out in that report?
Yeah, Councilmember Olson, you're absolutely correct. And then I'm going to hand that baton right to Ryan on this one.
Thank you, Ben. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Olson. So when you look at that comment memo for the preliminary plat, there are quite a few conditions in there. That is fairly typical, partly because with the preliminary plans, it doesn't have as much detail, and that's the intent of a preliminary plan. We do like to provide a lot of detail as they go into their final plans to be, some good guidance. That way, when we do get final plans during the final plat process, we have a, more complete plan set when we receive it, and kind of moves that process along quicker. So a lot of that is setting up for the final plan development. And it's really typical. We do a very detailed design as we run through it to have a lot of comments. In terms of stormwater, we're just trying to prioritize a little bit in terms of where our wellhead protection areas are. So we want to do all the infiltration in that north pond basin. So that played into those stormwater comments as well pretty heavily. But working with D.R. Horton and their engineer Westwood, we've done a lot of that with them in the past years. And, Westwood's very good to work with, and not seeing any issues with getting those comments addressed and moving forward with them.
Thank you.
All right, any other council comments at this point? I do have two. One is not necessarily for the today, if you will, but and Councilmember Thede kind of brought up the comment about Military Road, and I'm aware that obviously Military Road is not going to be eventually is going to be a trail. But what I did notice that I just want our staff, you guys, to be aware of and to keep in the back of your mind is when that day does come, that military trail or Military Road becomes a trail and a walking and biking trail. There is going to be these, I'll call them at grade, where the road's going to cross this trail. And this is one example where it's going to go from this development to the development to the south as for connectivity when Military Road actually goes away. And I'm assuming that's going to happen as this area continues to develop. I want to make sure that we're thinking about what do we want to do from I'll call it a protective standpoint. I know when I use go Jamaica to Military Road towards Woodbury, I see an awful lot of bikers. And my assumption is that this area, even when the road goes away and becomes a trail, is going to be very actively used by bikers, let alone people that are going to want to walk the old historic trail, read the info that we're going to put out there about that trail. And there could be conflicts if cars are not aware enough, if you will, coming through those areas to cross where this trail is going to be. I'm concerned that there could be in the future, if we're not careful with signage, markings, whatever we need to do, that as this trail is going to move its way on Military through this area, that when it finally gets fully developed and that road goes away, there could be pedestrian issues utilizing the trail. And whether it's the bicyclist's fault or whether it's the car's fault, I just want to make sure that we're aware of that and that we're going to think of ideas and ways to sign it and make sure that everybody's aware. So that's the one. The second thing, and it was talked about, but I just want to be very clear with this trail, and this road up in the top there, I did see that condition number 70 in the staff's report of information does outline the details of that driveway, and it is going to be 12 inches wide and 3 inches deep by 2 minutes surface. So it is going to be an asphalt surface. I am a little concerned about what the reason would be to have that go through there. The only thing I'd want to make sure, and I'm sure staff, since you're working with Woodbury on their future plans up there, that somehow doesn't link up in a way that cars will be coming from developments in Woodbury down this, what will be a narrow driveway, spilling out into this neighborhood. Second thing is, and I don't know if what I'm going to say is accurate or not, but I would also not want to see large farm equipment going down this driveway, driving through a neighborhood to maybe get to a different part of Cottage Grove for farming. And so I don't know how we make sure that those two concerns that I have as it relates to that driveway, because I'm not aware that we've ever done anything like this before. And so I just want to make sure you, staff, and the developer are, and I know we got the developer on the call, maybe they want to comment on that. That is the only concern I have about that driveway up there, is what will it become in the future?
Yeah, Mayor, Council, I would certainly think we could provide some stipulations through the final plat, the DA, to restrict that access for just the private use of personal vehicles, et cetera. So that is something we can certainly work through with the developer between now and final plat. And of course, the developers on the line and can certainly comment on what their thoughts are on that.
Good evening. This is Deb Ridgway. Thank you for having me. I don't even know where to start here. So I don't even know. I honestly don't know why the stipulation was in the purchase agreement that this that the property needs to maintain access. The only thing I can think of is if the property to the west were to develop, then it would leave no access for this particular site. So, yeah, as Jennifer had pointed out in her note here, that it will be a paved bituminous surface. My thought is, as far as maintenance, we'd probably look to the adjoining properties just to maintain the lawn up to the edge of that, but the property owner would have to maintain as far as snow clearing and those sorts of things.
And I do appreciate your comments, and it sounds like you are kind of dumbfounded by it yourself. And I guess to your point, if it is a situation where they want to keep their homestead, if you will, and that will be their access to get out of their homestead if future developments around it happen, I just want to make sure from, and maybe not even so much for you, but with our staff, communicating with Woodbury, if eventually that becomes a trail, say their homestead goes away and it's a trail to get to another park in Woodbury, totally understand it. But if it gets too close to an area that's going to have a road, and even though there might not be a connection, people will find a way. And I just want to be very, very careful that somehow this doesn't become a situation where a road is very close to this spot where people decide to take shortcuts, and then they're going to be driving through a neighborhood, which, most of these people looks like they're in essence going to be on a cul-de-sac. And to have people constantly driving through, I think would be concerning for me if I bought a house in a cul-de-sac. So if it's for the homestead, totally understand it. For the future, I just want to make sure that we're cognizant of what the remnant could be somewhere down the road that somebody's going to have to deal with.
Yes, agreed. And we will work with staff on coming up with some language, whether it's a easement or a type of document that we can have recorded against the property.
Okay, perfect. Any other comments from council at this point? I've not seen anybody jump in for questions from the general public. So I guess at this point, council, we have two motions to move forward with this particular project. If a council member wants to take number one, they're welcome to do so.
I will move that we adopt ordinance approving a zoning amendment to change to zoning from AG1 agricultural preservation to R3 single family residential with a PUD planned unit development.
All right, so I have a motion by Councilmember Thiede. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, I got a second by Councilmember Mills. Any further discussion? All right, Joe, do you want to take the roll?
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. And then we have the second action to be taken.
Mayor, I will move. We adopt Resolution 2020-052 approving the preliminary plat for a residential subdivision to be called Northwick Park that would create 71 lots for detached single-family homes and 3 outlots.
All right, so I have a motion by Councilmember Olson,
Second.
second by Councilmember Dennis. Any further discussions? All right, seeing none, Joe, do you want to do the roll?
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. Sounds good. The motion does carry. One quick question for the developer, if they're still on the line. Are you still there, Deb?
Yes.
One of the questions I was going to ask you is, we did actually hear from the previous developer of the other project off 65th that they're hoping to, starting grading in that this year. Is that your intent too?
Yes. So our intent would be to bring back final plat probably the end of May with the goal of starting grading early July out here.
Okay, perfect. Well, we're glad to have you continue to invest in our community. So thank you.
Thank you. We're excited to be out here still.
There we go. Glad
Thanks.
to have you. Keep coming.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening.
You too.
Thanks.
All right. Next on our regular agenda is C, which is the 2020 strategic plan. And our city administrator, Jennifer Levitt, you are going to take us through this.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight is really a culmination of a lot of work. We started this process back on January 4th. And I do have to say thank you to the City Council, the directors, and many of our managers, superintendents, and captains who have really played a critical role in creating this roadway going forward for our community for the next 3 years. As we go on, we really want to look at 3 of the main focus areas of the plan, and that is looking at quality of life, organizational excellence, and smart growth. And so when we look at this is really the 3 pillars of this strategic plan of where we're going into the future. When we break down those 3 pillars, we really look at how they can add to more strategic areas of focus. And so we look at having broadened recreational opportunities to be able then to maintain and enhance community connections, expand our full spectrum housing, foster positive business environment, have service excellence and physical stewardship, and be a high performance and inclusive employer. Now, I should note within your packet, you actually have a detailed spreadsheet of all of these actions, and these actions are all detailed out with various steps within your packet. And that spreadsheet outlines the various elements, the lead staff, the start date, and then all the steps that they're going to take in the next year to actually implement. So those details are in your packet as well, but I'll be just highlighting a few of them as we go on each one of these slides. So for example, we will be looking at broadening those recreational opportunities, because we know that the Mississippi River access is really critical to our community and enabling residents to be able to access it. We want to continue those discussions about the community center and what that means for a referendum. We'll be exploring recreational business opportunities, thinking outside the box and finding ways that we can fill gaps for recreational amenities in our community through businesses. We'll be expanding our recreational recreational programs. And then we'll develop and redevelop park and trail amenities. Tonight, through the different developments, you see that we're really enhancing our trail system, adding more park and open space as we go. And so these are definitely things that we want to continue to make an investment in. And also, we have a lot of historical properties, and we want to be able to inventory them, prioritize, and really be able to have laser focus as to which properties we need to be paying attention to and invest in. So that'll be some of our strategic activities. Now, when we look at maintain and enhance community connections, we really feel it's important that we increase our public engagement through interactive programming. Now, this isn't just one department. So when we look at a lot of these initiatives, this is across all of the different departments of the city, from public safety to public works. And so we are looking at increasing that public engagement and interaction through many different facets. We'll be looking at expanding and promoting public safety through the different engagement in the community. And I do have to say, even in the recent days with the COVID-19, you see our public safety team engaging with our parades for birthdays and supporting our community through the different elements that we're doing to really help lift the spirits of those in the community. And so once again, we're already initiating those positive engagements. When we look at also trying to find increased ways to communicate with our businesses and stay connected with them. As we go on to the next elements, that is the expanded full spectrum housing. We really need to start to focus on a policy that's guided toward residential growth. And as you saw tonight, our residential growth is still continuing and continuing very strongly, and we're seeing that investment. We want to make sure that we have really optimized our plans for redevelopment of our commercial area and mixed use properties, and making that really a key focus as we go forward. So thinking of like the shops of Cottage View, and then also looking for ways that we can find redevelopment activities, near 80th and East Point Douglas. One of the things I think is really, as we've looked at tonight through the actual proclamation for economic development, we know that our community has a very strong, positive environment, and we wanted to continue to foster that business environment, finding ways to expand our tax base, build on the public safety relationships within our business area. And I should note, the next council item will really focus on that and building that relationship between our business community and public safety. We want to continue the development of the Visitors Bureau, continue with our strong efforts of business retention and expansion, and then find ways to continue to develop a workforce educational opportunities in our community. Service, excellence, and physical stewardship is obviously very important to us. So when we look at that, we need to look at it in multiple ways. First, looking at it from an infrastructure standpoint, enhancing that program and dusting it off that has been looked at in many years ago about pavement management. Where's our infrastructure today? Where do we want it in the future? And how can we manage that in a very solid financial manner? Also, we want to make sure that the growth that we're doing is sustainable and physically smart. And so we need to be taking that into consideration. We also need to look at, focused service improvements. And when we say that, really that's for every department across the city. How can we improve our customer service? We know that we've made a lot of investments and changes in our fleet and facilities program. And so now we have the opportunity to really build off that groundwork that's been set to have a very robust fleet and facilities management plan going into the future. And when it comes to technology service enhancements, unfortunately, COVID-19 has kind of launched us already into this initiative as we've made a lot of technological advances already. So we're probably a little bit ahead of the proposed schedule in regards to this element. And also park and recreational planning is really important for how we're doing our services today and how we could do them into the future and continue to build on a very strong program we currently have. And lastly, we really want to be that high performance and inclusive employer. We know that employee engagement and retention is extremely important, and we need to be really able to recruit talent to our city. And we've done a great job in doing this, but obviously we have ways that we can continue to build on that. And so we're excited about ways we can continue to explore that and become really that employer of choice. And so, Mayor and members of the council, I'd be happy to stand for any questions pertaining to our strategic plan. And then I should also note there is an additional document for the strategic plan in your packet that is more of an easier version for the public to be able to review and understand in a very succinct manner.
All right, thank you, Administrator Levitt. Council, any questions for Councilmember Dennis?
Thank you, Mayor. Not necessarily a question, but just a quick piece of feedback. January 4th seems like it was an awfully long time ago. I remember that day we got together as a group and we had our consultant come in and do some great work with us. And, it's just so nice to see, how we've moved forward as a city, the team that we have, the people in place, all the work that's being done. And I think really the points that we've chosen here to focus on as a strategic plan are really points that are going to help move us forward here as we go through the coming time period. Even without thinking about some of the challenges that we're dealing with now, these points are so valid that they actually fit this moment and moving forward. So I just wanted to mention, for my part, my appreciation for our partners and our staff members and everybody working together. This is really a great thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Dennis. Councilmember Olson?
Mayor, Steve said it really well with regard to, January 4th seems like an awfully long time ago, but I really think that date and the time we spent in that room together, council and staff, in addition to the subsequent meetings that we had to kind of refine the initial ideas that came out of that meeting, really have led to where we are today with respect to council and staff working so closely together and so well together in unprecedented time of challenge for our community and for our country. Jennifer in that meeting, she started out the meeting with a statement about her desire for council and staff to really be connected and to share a vision and I guess to use business parlance, have everybody singing from the same sheet of music. And I feel very strongly that we've made great strides in that regard, and I hope the staff feels the same way. It was a really dynamic meeting with a lot of good energy throughout the day and a lot of great ideas that were surfaced. And then the work that's been done afterwards to just put this document together. I'm continually amazed at how much our staff gets done on a day in and day out basis. And it's really remarkable that we've gotten to this point in such a short period of time, even though that period of time seems like it was so long ago, as my colleague, Councilmember Dennis stated. So kudos to the staff for really doing such a great job of coming into the meeting with an open mind and with some very specific objectives in mind, and working so well together and with us as a mayor and council to get where we are today. I think we're well poised for a very successful remainder of 2020, even with the challenges we're facing, and then moving forward into the next few years beyond that.
Sounds great. Thank you, Councilmember Olson. Any other council?
Mayor, I'll make a comment too quick.
Yep, Councilman Thiede.
Everybody knows that I love strategic planning and planning in general, and it's a great thing to do so that we don't just accidentally have things happen, which things. It's great in the future when people say, "Oh gosh, that all really came together really nice." And it's not just by accident. It's because there is a plan, and we thought about things, and we thought about how things might change, and leaving obviously some wiggle room to be able to adjust when necessary. So I think just in I guess it's been 10 years now that I've been council, and that we have changed a lot in terms of how we look at planning and that, and it shows by the direction that this city is going and the successes that we've had. So very good. Good job, everyone.
Sounds good. Councilmember Thiede. Any other council comments?
I'll make a comment here, Mayor, if you don't mind.
Councilmember Mills.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. Great job. Very exciting. And just so well put together, and it's an exciting thing to see. So it is quite amazing to think that was only a few months ago, with everything that's been going on. So thank you, everybody.
Perfect. Well, and I'll just end it before we obviously approve this strategic plan. I've been on the council as mayor for this is my 12th year, and each time we do these strategic plans, it amazes me how much we get accomplished. Not even just the fact of the day of doing the plan and working with the groups, but how much we really do put a laser focus on those particular categories that we find are important. And even during this, as we've all touched upon it, this difficult time with the coronavirus, the COVID-19 situation, basically our strategic plan still flows perfect into what we're looking for. The city is still growing. We, even with all the stuff that's going on, we still have developments. You just saw it tonight. We have additional housing developers coming into town, and they're not waiting. They're actually starting, and they're going to start building and doing construction. We still have, commercial things happening, even as goofy as, everything being shut down right now. In the situation that's happening across the world with COVID-19, we're hearing from everybody out there that a lot of the manufacturing facilities and that did leave the United States are maybe now looking at coming back to the United States because of the situations that have arisen out of the COVID-19. Well, guess what? Cottage Grove has the largest tract of in business park land available for something like that to happen. So you know what? We're poised very well to continue to grow in our business park no matter what happens. So, and then of course on the On the recreational side of things, we're still, working and discussing and planning for our community center. There might be, we'll have to see how things go. We're a very fiscally conservative council. We want to make sure that we're not going to hurt our general public with, tax increase or whatever. So, if we do truly go for a referendum this year, we'll make sure it's fiscally important and conservative, but yet get to to what the community wants in a future community center. Or if, and I keep saying the if word because council, we have not really talked about this. If we deem we need to wait a little bit, then we'll wait a little bit, because we don't want to create a big issue for our people that are suffering right now due to the coronavirus shutdown. So we hear you, I guess is what I'm saying to our public out there. The council is very much united in growing our community and getting the amenities that this community wants, but we're going to do it in a very smart and fiscal way. And we'll continue to do that. And I think that's why our community is one of the best communities, not just because I'm saying it, but because we're being told this consistently and constantly about how good we operate in this environment, both in the COVID-19, but also in how we work with those out there that are looking to help us grow and build a beautiful city. So kudos staff, kudos council for a great job on putting this plan together. And I'm looking forward right now for somebody to make the motion to accept and let's roll this thing and get it rolling.
So moved.
Go ahead. Was that Councilmember Olson or Thiede?
Olson approved. I'll second.
Oh, Councilmember Olson made the motion to approve, review and approve strategic plan, second by Councilmember Thiede. Since we all did make comments already, I don't think I have to ask that. So Joe, do you want to do a roll?
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. There we go. We're all set to go there. Our last item this evening on our regular agenda is a police officer hiring authorization. And again, we'll see some stuff on our PowerPoint here, but our Director of Public Safety, Pete Kerner, will take us through this one.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'll get the PowerPoint up here. How about that? I haven't got it to work. So, well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the authorization that we're asking for a 43rd officer position. You guys, back in last month, we actually had some discussions about this. So there's going to be some redundancy, some things you had already heard, but we keep going back to, strategic planning. We've identified a strategic vision of increasing staffing in order to provide more proactive and preventative police responses as our community grows. I'd put us up against any agency in the state. We're really doing a good job with that. This year, we're currently working on, with the strategic planning, we are doing an evaluation of our staffing of the police department as well. There's kind of back in March, we did submit the COPS hiring program. This is just kind of a reminder here, but that it was the March 4th meeting, and Captain McAllister had everything completed. We did submit the grant, and that was requesting 3. Obviously, right now with everything going on and all the different money you're hearing about, I don't know how this grant is going to play out right now, but we're still optimistic. I think we put together a solid proposal. I think this is probably the big question you guys are wondering. I was in front of you back in March again. Why am I right back again? Why now? Obviously, currently we're authorized for 42 officers right now, but we've had some long-term leaves and vacancies. So as you're aware, we've been operating with 39 officers for quite some time, over probably about a year, with some retirements and just kind of how it's played out. But more recently, we did have a sergeant that resigned, and we also had an officer during field training had resigned, and we currently have an officer on administrative leave. With that, I just kind of want to cover the numbers just as a reminder. Back in 2005, that's when we hit 39 officers, and it's just been a really slow increase. and from 2010 to 2015, we just added the one body. And back in 2017, we went from 41 to 42. And that's when we really put an emphasis on some of our investigative areas and a forensics detective. So we had added that body. So, and I think this chart that has been put together does a nice job of explaining kind of where we're at. And I think it's just a good reminder that we do have that excellent service model. We're very community oriented. We do proactive programs. We've started some more with mental health response, case management, special investigations unit, working with some sex trafficking investigations as well. So again, I think we stand out. But even though we want to be more proactive, we want preventative police responses. With the strategic plan, we want employee engagement, we want retention, and we want these programs to help recruit the best candidates as well. So, but with all of these additions, if you look, our authorized patrol officers have actually gone down. A year ago, when we promoted a sergeant to deputy director to a captain's position, obviously that worked out well. She's doing so much with emergency management, and that was kind of the plan. But as we've added some different opportunities, whether it's a rotation, a career enhancement, and investigations, we've added 2 there. It takes away from patrol. So, even though we want these opportunities, we want these extra programs, really the heart and soul of our department is being out on the street and the patrol. So that's what we're getting at right now. So why now? Again, we did start that hiring process to fill the 2 positions that we have vacant. That was started back in December. It's a long process. We did interviews, and we did it with screening interviews. So we had officers and sergeants involved in that. They moved out of, I think they interviewed just under 50 that came in for interviews. We actually utilized staff versus just coming right to a command level. So they gave us about 20 candidates, and we did a command interview with them. And we also utilized the Hero Center. We had them do some scenario-based training. We had them write a police report afterwards. And when we're all said and done, we had about 10 really, really solid candidates. I would have hired any of them. We did move forward with the backgrounds. And right now we do have an eligibility list. We have 4 candidates that are ready to go. So that's what brings us here now is we have a May 4th projected start date. And that was more based on just availability with the Hero Center for us to get them through in that 80-hour academy. And that'll be followed by 14 weeks of field training. So when it's all said and done, we really won't have we won't feel the impact on our schedule until September of 2020. Budget impact right now, when we look at asking earlier than originally, it was going to be a 2021 to ask for this officer. But right now, just with the timing, we have all the training officers ready, and it'll really have a positive impact on our schedule. So we have salary savings obviously with the 2 vacant police positions. And as you're aware, our administrative assistant, she retired last year, and times have changed. We're looking at changing up that position, maybe to do some management with the body worn cameras or some crime analyst things. So we're still evaluating that position, but we didn't plan on filling that until at least June of this year. So that's kind of where we're looking at the savings for that. Things, as they change during the year, we just are asking for that 43rd officer right now because as things changed in 2021, we didn't want to then come to you for that budget ad. We wanted to discuss it now. So there'll be a lot more discussions with the grant and how we move forward in the budget process. But for right now, our ask is to approve this 43rd officer. That way we can do a conditional job or have them go through and we can start all 3 on May 4th. So with that, I know I went through it pretty quick. We're just asking for you to authorize that increase in our staffing level to 43. So if anyone has questions, I'm available.
All right, Council, any questions for Pete on this one? Councilmember Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor. Not a question, but just a feedback. I think by having 3 individuals go through the training at the same time, there's a scale of economy of savings for us to do that. So this is something from a fiscal perspective, I think it's something that would be well worth our consideration to do.
Sounds good. Any other questions from council? All right, council, we have a recommendation before us. If somebody would like to make that motion.
Mayor, I can.
Mayor, go ahead, Steve.
Thank you. I'll make motion to authorize the addition of 1 police officer position, increasing our authorized staffing level to 43 licensed peace officers.
All right, so I have a motion
Second.
by Councilmember Dennis, second by Councilmember Olson. Any further discussion, council? Hearing none. Joe, do you want to do the roll?
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. There we go. Thank you, Pete. All right, next is on our agenda is council comments or requests. I'll do my normal. I'll start with Councilmember Mills. If you have anything you want to add this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to again extend thanks to staff for all of their direction, their clarity during this time. The communications have been great in getting it out to the public, and also communications with us. Just fantastic job. I couldn't be more proud of being a part of this community. And so thank you to all of you. So that's all I have to share. And also thanks to all my colleagues too, as well, here on the council and all that's being done right now.
Sounds good. Thank you, Councilmember Mills. Councilmember Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple things here for us tonight. The first one I would like to mention is just an appreciation to our streets team who are out right now working to patch potholes throughout the community. As I've been driving out a little bit to get gas or some other things, I've noticed that our teams have been out there doing a really good job. So that's something I hope that Mr. Burfine will pass on to the members of our Public Works team. Second, this is National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. And I would like to recognize the fine men and women of the Washington County Sheriff's Office who are dispatchers for all of the fine work that they do, helping people in times of high stress and emergencies to ensure that they are an integral link in the public safety chain so that we can get the help to the people that need it in that moment of need. So I thank them for that. Next, it's Severe Weather Awareness Week, and I was watching Channel 5, Dave Dahl, earlier, and he was talking about the fact that there's going to be some sirens going off tomorrow, and just get people thinking about what they can do should we have severe weather come through our area, which when we get into springtime, this is always a possibility for us. So having an evacuation route, putting together some things in your basement, having a weather radio, things like that, which are really important for us to have to make sure that we're safe in an unfortunate moment that could hit. So last but not least, I do have a question for administration. And it was noted a little bit earlier when we talked about one of our street management projects that right now, one of the things that we're taking advantage of is some really low gas and oil prices. So I was just curious if staff has anything they can report, if there's been any work on purchasing some fuel futures or anything along those lines that could capitalize on some really low oil and gas prices.
Mayor, members of the council, when it comes to the fuel, we do purchase that in a commodity, and so I don't know if we're able to capture all of that savings, but we can do some further investigation and report back if there's a way for us to take more advantage of the current environment in regards to fuel.
Okay, thank you for that. And then, Mayor, I'll just finish up by saying also and echoing some of the thoughts of Councilmember Mills that our staff team and our emergency management program that we have here has been doing a fantastic job for everybody. And I hope that all the members of our community, are aware of this good work. And if you happen to see any of our responders that are out across the public safety line, please give them a wave or a shout, let them know how much we appreciate everything going on. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Councilmember Dennis. Councilmember Thiede.
Yeah, I got one thing here. just let people know that the Strawberry Fest committee is having that difficult discussion right now about whether we actually have the festival this year or we cancel it and maybe look for other little innovative ways to have some type of festival. So we're probably not this coming Monday, but the 27th, we have another meeting at that we'll have a discussion and probably make a decision at that point. And I'm just offering if anybody has any input that they want to provide, one way or the other, we'll certainly accept it and take it into consideration. So I guess that's all I got.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Councilmember Thiede. Councilmember Olson.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to remind everybody that if they have not yet completed their 2020 census, time is of the essence. Let's try to get those done. We are doing a great job as a state here in Minnesota. The state of Minnesota actually leads the country in census being entered via either website or filled out and sent in via mail. You should have received something in your mailbox with a very specific number on it that you have to enter into the website in order for the website to accept the data that you are going to put into it about your family. But the census is a really critical part of being a good citizen here in the United States. In order for communities like ours and the state of Minnesota and our congressional district to get the sorts of funding that we deserve and to be able to have accurate representation when it comes to our elected officials, we have to have an accurate count of the number of residents who live in each specific demographic area. So please do your census if you have not done so already. Very important. Second thing, I just wanted to take a minute to express my gratitude to the residents of the city of Cottage Grove in South Washington County. You know, adversity brings out the worst in people and it brings out the best in people. And as folks who have lived in the community for a long time, you know, we've been through an awful lot here in the city of Cottage Grove, but we've never been through something like this. And this is certainly a time of adversity for many people, whether it comes to, you know, their business or their employment, you know, whether it comes to how their family is dealing with the mental and physical health elements of this. And, you know, the folks here in the city of Cottage Grove, not unexpectedly, have really rallied together and done just a marvelous job of trying to support each other through a very difficult time. We see positive stories constantly, whether it's supporting some of our local bar and restaurant owners and other local businesses. You know, I stopped into Bongards the other day and I picked up my Easter ham and I just asked how business was. And I was told that it is phenomenal. It is as good or better than it has ever been because people have taken it seriously that shopping local is important. They know they can find what they need there. They know they're going to get the service that they want. You know, it's a clean, comfortable place to shop. And that's just a microcosm of all of these other places where we've got, you know, whether it's Junction 70, Carboni's, et cetera. People are just doing a great job of trying to support each other. They're sending meals to our first responders on a regular basis to say thank you for the work that they're doing. So kudos to the residents of the city of Cottage Grove, South Washington County, for joining hands and trying to maintain a positive attitude and a positive approach to dealing with a very difficult situation. Tip of my cap to you and your families, and thank you so much for all of your support. And with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Council, for all the great comments. The only item I did want to bring up, just as a friendly thank you, Walter, thank you, and a reminder. It's interesting that you know the Councilmember Thiede was commenting about Strawberry Fest, and you know a lot of communities festivals are canceling way out there too, even beyond June, and so on into the summer. So obviously they have a big decision to make at some point in time here, but they're going to wait a little longer to see what happens, what I think is the right thing to do. However, what I did want to share with the public is one way or the other, we will be having a 4th of July fireworks display in Cottage Grove to celebrate our community, celebrate our nation, no matter what is happening. And the reason I wanted to bring that up specifically was also just to share with everybody once again that we do have businesses and individuals, and frankly our Cottage Grove Lions, but we have businesses that are stepping up, have already stepped up even before the COVID situation happened, and put forth money to make sure that we have a spectacular fireworks display this year. And a special call out once again to Cottage Grove 3M, Hy-Vee, Renewal by Anderson, and Tennis Sanitation. All of these businesses have already stepped up and provided the funding to make sure that we have a fantastic display to celebrate our community, celebrate our nation on July 4th. So no matter what, we're going to have a celebration that day. If we still have to be social distant, we can, but you can look up in the sky all around Cottage Grove and you'll be able to see a fantastic fireworks display by your businesses and individuals in our community and put on by the great group from the Cottage Grove Lions Club. So I just wanted to mention all of that through all the craziness of what's going on right now and so much stuff that's been canceled. I'm telling you, there's one item that's not canceled, and that is the 4th of July fireworks display. So that was the only item I had on my notes. As we're moving through the agenda, we are up to 13, which is a workshop session, which is open to the public. Our workshop this evening is just a general discussion about the liquor license, and it's basically, we're not doing any votes or anything like that. It's to receive information from our staff. We had a workshop, or we had an item on our agenda a few meetings ago regarding concern or language as it relates to 3-2 beer being, within so much distance and that. I won't get all the details because I don't want to steal Joe's thunder, but maybe you can just kind of walk us through it, Joe, on this workshop.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm trying to see if I can get this to go. Whoops, that's not it.
It's not going up.
Well, it took all the way towards the end of the meeting to have our first real technical difficulty, right?
There we go.
There
Can
you
everybody
go.
see it?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So basically at the March 18th City Council meeting, Council requested staff to do a workshop for the purpose of reviewing the current liquor ordinance and how 3-2 malt liquor licenses are regulated. So we put together a short PowerPoint to go over the city code and state statutes related to intoxicating and 3-2 liquor, and provide some information on how neighboring communities regulate the proximity to one another. So I know there was some discussion at the last meeting regarding there wasn't specific definitions of some of the terms. And when we updated the code in 2017, we adopted the terms from chapter 340A. So basically what that does is if there's any terms or conditions that are updated in the state statute, we're automatically with those new definitions, rather than if we had them in our code, then they would be basically out of date if there was any changes in state statute or state language regarding those. As we highlighted, that reference terms and then hereby adopted by reference and are part of this chapter set out in full. So these are kind of the definitions that come from state statute on intoxicating and 3-2 liquor. So basically, intoxicating is anything over 3.2% by weight, and 3.2 is anything less than 3.2% by weight. And like I mentioned, definitions are under state statute 340A. Just a quick definition of what off sale and on sale are. Basically, off sale is anything that is not consumed on the premises, and on sale is restaurants, bars, golf courses, things like that. So basically, that's the same thing there. And then these are the terms that we use in the city code for exceptions to some of the proximities. So no on sale license within 300 feet of a school or church. And then for off sale, within 1,000 feet of another licensed off sale intoxicating premises with the nearest building.
Mayor, members of the council. Wow, I haven't talked all night. My voice is froggy. Sorry about that. Good evening. I just wanted to point out on this slide that the terminology that we used are specifically chosen to, they were specifically chosen because they are the statutory definitions. We didn't arbitrarily decide to use the word on sale license. It is an on sale as defined in the previous slide, which means that it is for consumption on the premises. And similarly, with the off sale intoxicating license, we are specifically using the terminology from state law. Off sale, meaning it is in original packages for consumption off the licensed premises, and intoxicating, meaning intoxicating liquor is defined again on 2 slides ago, that it is more than 3.2% of alcohol by weight. So these words are not chosen just randomly. We intentionally chose those words for those specific sections and those specific types of licenses. So I wanted to point that out because it's not common usage of the words that we're talking about. We're talking about the statutory definitions. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
So these are basically the types of licenses and permits that the city of Cottage Grove currently uses. Basically in 2017, why we updated the ordinance is because of the proliferation of brew pubs and small brewers and the so-called Surly bill that allowed them to produce and sell alcohol at their place of business. We don't have any brew pubs or breweries in Cottage Grove, but we wanted to put that language in place if there was ever any interest in that. So these are kind of what we have currently. Here's a brief history of the 3.2% malt liquor. Minnesota is the only remaining state that offers 3.2 liquor. I think the last few states repealed that within the last year or two. So proximity restrictions, we kind of looked at what other cities are doing for a frame of reference for council discussion. LeBlaine, for example, they have a minimum distance of 1 mile between liquor stores. Maplewood, they have 2640. And Newport is a minimum 1,000 feet, and that is currently what the city of Cottage Grove uses as well. You can see the spreadsheet that a management assistant, Chris Hetland, put together. There's some other different ones that some other cities use as well, but these are the ones that we wanted to highlight. There's 3 of them right there. And this goes back to state statute as well. So there is actually a limit on the number of on-sale intoxicating licenses that we can have in the city. Obviously, if council feel comfortable with restricting even further, they could certainly do that. But state law says that you can't have more than 18 licenses plus 100 over 45,000. Obviously, we're not over 45,000, so we're capped at 18. The next slide shows we are currently at, nope, sorry, that's not that. This is the types of on sale intoxicating that we have. So we have one club, 18 on sale intoxicating. And then we have, off sale, there it is. So the 18, we actually have 5 currently for off sale intoxicating and 4 for off sale 3-2. Hope Glen Farm is the only one with a consumption and display. And then the VFW has a club on sale intoxicating. So we have actually a total of 20 liquor licenses in the state, or sorry, in the city of Cottage Grove at present. So this is kind of a
Joe,
map.
Can I just jump in? So
Yep.
just as a side note, so the state statute that you were talking about where it was the 18,
Yep.
that number is specific to, in essence, liquor stores.
Correct.
Okay. Would it
actually, Mayor Bailey, that's specific to on sale intoxicating.
Okay.
So, and I'm not sure if the VFWs, they have a club on sale intoxicating license. That may not count in the total. So we either have 8 or 9, depending on if that one counts in the total of the 18 allowed.
Okay. But that, and the reason I was just bringing it up because it was interesting at first, when I first saw this, I was almost thinking it was saying that we're restricted in the number of restaurants that sell alcohol, not liquor stores and a different venue. So, because like on the one slide, you showed that we have 20 total of different types of businesses that are doing liquor of some type. But none of that includes any of the gas stations per se that do 3-2 beer, correct?
Nope, that would be included. That's the off sale 3-2. There's 4 of them.
So that's the 4 there, right there. Okay. But the one that the state specifically dictating at this point is the maximum of 18 off sale.
Nice. Sorry.
On sale.
It's on sale.
On sale intoxicating.
Oh, so we have 8. So 8 of the 18. So we have, if you will, options for 10 more.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that club on sale intoxicating license counts against that total. We'd have to do a little more digging, but we're about halfway to the total allowed under statute.
Okay. Sounds good.
So this is kind of a map that economic development specialist Matt Wolf put together, kind of going by distances between certain businesses. Obviously, they're in the business districts. And then at the very far bottom is River Oaks and Hope Glen Farms. We tried to fit it all onto one page, but had a little tough time doing that just based on the proximity of all of them. So basically, we're ready to listen to council's questions and discussions and direction on how to proceed.
Okay, council, is there any questions or comments or any discussion that you want to have regarding any of the information that was shared with us?
Yeah, I guess I got a question, with the stuff going on right now to try to whether 3-2 will go away or that the convenience stores will be able to essentially sell all liquor. How does that affect things also?
I'm not sure if the state repeals the 3-2 licensing, I'm not sure that would obligate us to create another grandfather license category, and that was basically repealed by the state. We would probably have to address that when that happened, but I think we would have a say in what happens here. And Corey may be able to elaborate on that.
Your Honor, members of the council, I think what would happen if the state repealed any regulations of 3.2 is our license would then become moot, and those kinds of facilities that currently have a license would just be allowed to sell it. So that's the only change. So I don't see anything else happening. If the state basically made it unregulated, then we wouldn't regulate it either.
I guess the question, though, is more than likely what I think Councilmember Theedy's speaking to is, the discussion is that eventually 3.2 is going to go away. If that truly happens, and let's say all these, well, in our case right now, there's 4 gas stations that have 3.2 beer that they're selling. The fact of the matter is that goes away. They don't automatically switch over to the new version, if you will, where it would be full hard liquor, correct?
Oh, absolutely not. No, they would have to apply for an intoxicating liquor license.
And they would then still fall into the parameters, the distance requirements that are currently out there for the rest of our intoxicating liquor, the 1,000-foot rule, correct?
Correct, Your Honor. And they would also have to comply with all of the other state statutes, which have a lot of other restrictions and regulations around selling off sale. So with the separate entrance and all of that. So they would have to be able to comply with those statutory regulations as well.
So with the question that came up was the Cottage Grove BP and allowing them to have a 3.2 license. There's no necessarily any danger of if we granted that, and based on the interpretation of the definition and so forth, that there'd be any real problem that if they repealed the 3.2, that they'd all of a sudden be selling full intoxicating liquor.
Councilmember Theedy, right now, a state statute for off-sale intoxicating liquor is that it can be only issued to an exclusive liquor store, which sells specific items related to alcohol. For instance, Councilmember Dennis can probably elaborate on this too. They are limited in what you can sell in an off-sale intoxicating liquor store. So for instance, unless one of those places changed their business model considerably, they would not qualify for being able to even apply for an off-sale intoxicating liquor license.
Okay, thank you.
And I would also like to mention that we do have that 1,000-foot rule, and that is completely adopted by the city council. I think maybe looking back at the history in the council packet, it was adopted in 1998 or thereabouts. And that certainly can be changed at council's discretion if they wanted to extend it out further. One other example is if you look closely at the packet, Maple Grove doesn't allow 3.2 licenses at gas stations for whatever reason. So each city has the authority to do how they see fit to regulate the sale of alcohol in their city.
Okay. Well, I think the biggest question that was happening at that last meeting regarding the BP Amico, and I think there was a Holiday Station on Jamaica, or I'm sorry, on Hinton and 70th, was understanding the definition of intoxicating liquor, I believe, is really what the bigger challenge was, because the one would be close to Cub, who sells 3.2, and then the full liquor store, which in this case down there is Top 10. The Holiday didn't have anything around it, so that was kind of a mute one. But the question was the distance, and I think that's where everybody was. That's the only reason I really wanted to have this conversation, is to see if there was any clarification that needed to be made from our standpoint, so that going forward, and who knows, if another gas station or whoever wants to come in and do a 3.2 liquor license, is our language clear enough from a council's perspective to dictate what is that versus what is the typical full intoxication, I guess? Is council comfortable with the way things are set right now in the statutes, or is there a concern that we need to be more specific about what we need to do with regards to 3.2? Councilmember Olson?
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't sure if you could see me. I'm the one who kind of brought this out in the last meeting, and to be frank, I'm still a little bit fuzzy relative to some of the terminology. I recognize that the terminology we're using is in keeping with state statute. I don't have an argument there. I also recognize that sometimes state statute isn't as clear as we would like it to be. And you expressed correctly that where I got hung up a little bit was the idea of intoxicating versus the idea of something that is not intoxicating, hence 3.2. Now, in reading this document that was handed out prior to the meeting, staff was kind enough to note that while the definition of intoxicating liquor still exists under state statute, et cetera, and so on, the term non-intoxicating liquor, which was once commonly used to define 3.2 beer, has since been struck and has been prohibited from use. See, to me, the issue is, are you very clearly defining the difference between one and the other? And if I'm an attorney, it's pretty easy to point to state statute and go and say to people, well, there it is, and it's clearly defined, and so that's the difference. But to the layman who doesn't read state statute necessarily or understand it as well as somebody with a law degree, I think it's still a little bit fuzzy. That being said, my sense from this conversation and the previous conversation is that we really don't have much ability to change our definition or to hone down the definition to be much clearer. And frankly, there might not even be a point to it if 3.2 ultimately, is no longer manufactured, since state of Minnesota is the only one. I still find it somewhat confusing. I think it's probably somewhat confusing to the average human being, but I certainly not the hill that I want to die on. I don't think it's something that we absolutely positively have to change. I'd like to think a little bit more about the distance requirements, and I think what Joe pointed out about Maple Grove, that's kind of an interesting note that I would not have known had we not had this discussion tonight. So, I'm appreciative that we're having the conversation because I learned something there. But I'll ask my council colleague, Mr. Dennis, who has much more experience in this than I, as I did at the last meeting. I mean, Steve, do you have anything to add to the discussion that you feel might be, worth the council continuing to talk about?
Well, when you pulled that, you and I had some dialogue at the council dais back and forth on this particular issue. And I think that, when we write our code and we put that out for people, again, you make a very good point. This is a very obscure law. I've been involved in this industry for almost 18 years. And there were certain points of that obscurity that I did not know, just because I don't deal in 3.2. I talked with our director of public safety. He had no idea. He's a police chief. He's been dealing with laws forever. So what I would like to see is that there's something that we can put in there in just plain worded English to delineate between the two types of licenses. And maybe the statement is something as simple as saying, the the full strength license, whatever we want to use for the definition of that, there's 1,000-foot rule involved in that. For the malt beverage license, there is not, or if they had like a 300-foot that I saw on the screen here, whatever the designation is, just adding a simple little bit of wording in there to let people know that this is a different type of license that falls under a different guideline, because it piqued your interest, it piqued mine. I reached out to the staff, tried to have a conversation that way. You brought it up at the council dais, and so again, we have people that are experts in these things and know and understand the basis for how this was crafted, but the common citizen just isn't going to know. And I think since the code is meant to apply to everybody, like we would do in a training sense, right? We want to make sure that our training protocol and our lesson plan accounts for everybody, but we have to make sure that we're hitting the lowest common denominator there. I mean, it's just like a chain being as strong as the weakest link. So making sure that language is very clear, very basic, and just putting a small piece into it really is all that's needed in order to bring that to a point where I think a person who's not an expert could look at it and just say, oh, okay, I understand that. And that was, I think, the reason you pulled it. It was a reason that I had reached out to staff, because there just was not a clear delineation when you go back to that line and you read it word for word and you're looking for numbers and other things in there. There just isn't anything that separates that delineation of understanding out. So that's my only point on it. And again, Mayor Bailey was correct. There was no issue whatsoever on approving the one up on 70th Street. But just to make sure that we were treating all of our business investors fairly, through the economic development process, we do a BR&E program, B&R, business retention. Okay. So we want to make sure that we're doing things here to help have a conducive environment to people's success that have invested here. And I just think it's the right thing to do. It's fair, and it allows more people than less to have an understanding of how the code works and what it defines.
Your Honor, members of the council, by all means, we can add more words to make it crystal clear about which kinds of licenses we're talking about for the different distances. I think that's an easy fix. I think that's a very reasonable solution. So we can come back to you with some proposed language very shortly to clarify this whole issue.
I think personally that would be a great idea, because I think that will help with any thoughts or concerns, and especially now that, I mean, we know it's going to be interesting if and when the 3-2 situation goes away on, what the general public is going to understand, what is approved and what's not approved. What's the difference, because they're going to see, as an example, gas stations no longer will have beer, quote unquote, to sell because they don't have the right license. And unless the council decides that they want to change the distance thing, which I don't, it's the rest of them really aren't going to have that option. I guess the only one that might have the option, if you look at the distance radius thing that was out on the slide that Joe had provided, I think Chris had put it together from staff. That would probably be the Holiday on Hinton and 70th. Otherwise, the rest of the gas stations that currently have 3-2 would not qualify under our current statute to change from a 3-2 situation to a full intoxicating liquor, similar to, yeah, there you go. So that's just my comment. So I think it's a great call out, Councilmember Dennis, for being very clear and concise on the message, so that any layman person can understand it. So staff, I think if the message out of this is let's do a little language cleanup so that it can be brought back to council for review and approval.
Mayor, members of the council, we'd be happy to clarify that language and provide that back to you for consideration.
Sounds good. Council, any other comments on this particular topic? All right, next item then after this workshop was a workshop closed to the public, which there is none this evening. So the final thing for this evening is adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Thiede,
Second.
Second.
second by Councilmember Mills. Everybody really got big on my screen now. Justin, you're growing hair.
I really am, and it's a problem. Yes.
Exactly. All right, Joe, do you want to take the final roll?
Yes, Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Dennis,
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye. So we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Take care.